are we feeling today? Okay, noise, yes. Thank you all so much for coming. This is not your minority, Asian Fandom Spaces. My name is Kait Venturina. I am a cosplayer. I've been attending C2E2 for like almost a decade now. That's kind of crazy. And I'm also a Columbia College Chicago alumni, as well as the former president of the Asian Student Organization there. And with me here, right beside me, are my lovely table panelists. We're also Columbia and ASO alumni who you'll get to meet soon. But just a little background about this panel itself. I led this panel during Columbia's first convention, C2E2 Expo 2023, if anybody's attended there, and then we did this panel again this year, but I wasn't there, but now we're here again, and as I've always wanted to kind of expand this to the general Chicago public convention, so C2E2 is like the big con, first big con, so thank you all so much, yes! More info about this panel. I was inspired by Cool Cosplay's Black Excellence panel, so shout out to them if y'all attended yesterday's panel. That I hope it was amazing. But essentially, like as a nerd, like the rest of us here, this has always been a topic I wanted to explore while finding and figuring out my own Asian identity as a Filipino American, and I'm still trying to find and figure that out, as most people are in the Asian American experience. But essentially, if you do not know what mono-minority means, it's basically a term that refers to a stereotype that can date back to World War II, in which Asian Americans are perceived as successful or the complicit minority. Whenever it came to politics, there was always this mindset of keeping your head down and just keep working, and that's how we'll become successful. When in reality, that really isn't the case, and it essentially pits us against other communities of color. It also ignores the diversity, the differences, and the disparities within our communities in order to uphold white supremacy. So that is a lot to unpack, which is why we're here. Yes, and we're here to show you that we are completely the opposite of that. We are not a mono-minority. And we're trying to talk to you all specifically how it relates to fandom and pop Asian culture, specifically anime and K-pop, for example, and how you all can be a better ally for the community. So thank you all for coming again, and let's just get right to it. Okay, good. The slides are working. Just a little bit about ASO. Obviously, Columbia, it's within Columbia with students and alumni dedicated to creating a community for the Asian Pacific Islander, Desi American, and Native Hawaiian students by building cultural awareness through student-led social and educational programming and events. And if you're ever wondering to collaborate with us, we're always happy to collaborate with you all in the Chicago community. We hope to also do this for other future conventions around the Chicago area as well. So let's just get right to it with panelist introductions. If panelists can introduce with their name, pronouns, and with their cosplay, guys. If you can tell, I am Lucy Gray from Somford's, the Ballad of Somfords and Snakes, yes. And then I'll pass it on to Ari.
Hello everyone, my name is Ari Batang. My pronouns are she, her. I also go by Ari. I am ASO's former senior advisor, and I currently work as an independent filmmaker and micro-influencer. My handle is Ari.Christine with 2 E's, and you can find me on Instagram and TikTok.
Hi, I'm Wesley Enriquez. My name is he, him. I was a creative director at Columbia, and I currently work as a graphic designer at Pose, and I'm dressed as Free from Pokemon.
Alright, hi folks, my name is Tina Kim Nguyen. Just Tina is fine. I use she, her pronouns. I was the president of ASO back in 2019, and currently I am a theater artist in the Chicago area, and I'm dressed as your knitting needles.
Hi, my name is Jess Oh. My pronouns are she, hers. I was the creative director during Tina's reign in 2019 at Columbia College Chicago, and today I'm dressed as Snorlax from Pokemon, Candy. And I'm currently a graphic designer at Brios. So I forgot to say who I'm cosplaying as. I am Satana from DC Comics. Any DC fans here? Thank you all so much, panelists. If you didn't know, Ari and I were also in the same class, recently graduated of 2023. Yes. Okay, so this is how today's agenda will play out. Obviously, we did an introduction, so we're already a third of the way there. And then we have a lovely educational and informational presentation for you all, and then we get to talk to you all at the last part. Yay. All right, so before we get into the presentation, I do want to mention a few content warnings before we begin. Heavy topics including but not limited to racism, fetishization, appropriation, stereotyping, and sexual violence will be mentioned and discussed in the duration of this panel. So if you feel a need to, feel free to step out, take a deep breath, and do whatever you need to do for your own mental wellness. Okay, so what is cultural appropriation? It is the unacknowledged theft of customs, practices, ideas of one community by members of another, typically more dominant people or society, for their own personal interests. And I do want to mention that cultural appropriation is not something exclusive to the Asian community, but is something that greatly affects all communities of color. So as for examples, I do need to shout out fellow ASO alumni Mitch, who worked on the example slides you're about to see. He could not be here last minute, but Mitch, if you're watching, thank you for your hard work. Okay, so examples. Let's start off with cosplay, being that many of us here are cosplayers. So cosplay is not bad in itself, but it can become very dangerous when you are trying to change your features to mimic those of another race or ethnicity. Body type and facial features are not accessories as much as the media will tell you they are, and this can look like stretching or sticking your eyes out, lightening your skin tone, darkening your skin tone like 50 shades darker, and so on. Similarly, it is traditional attire, whether you're wearing it for cosplay or for just in general. It's not bad in itself, but traditional attire does have a lot of cultural significance and should not be worn lightly or sexualized or without the proper knowledge of the garments. Going back to how facial and body features are not accessories, the same can be said for culture itself and people themselves. And as much as I love her, Avril Lavigne did commit cultural appropriation for her song and music video Hello Kitty, as can be seen in the text below or below the text. She used Japanese culture and Japanese women as accessories for the purpose of fitting a certain aesthetic. And a lot of times people who do commit cultural appropriation, they do come from a place with good intentions. However, good intentions do not outweigh harmful and hurtful actions. As for art and tattoos, you gotta be really careful if you are a non-Asian artist and you are taking inspiration from Asian culture. You cannot pick and choose what you like to make your piece look foreign enough or cool or to fit a certain aesthetic. For an example, and I know she's not the only person who has done this, but Ariana Grande, she got a kanji tattoo with the intentions of its being said 7 rings, but in reality it means small charcoal grill.
I love this.
Yes, do not do this. And this is what happens when you pick and choose language to look cool and fit a certain aesthetic. And this is also proof that cultural appropriation does have consequences to anyone involved. On the bottom right-hand corner is an image from the movie Dragon Ball Evolution, which is a live-action adaptation of the popular manga Dragon Ball Z. When casting for this movie, instead of casting a Japanese actor, they decided to cast a white actor. Thus, the erasure of Asian people while stealing Asian culture for entertainment and for profit. And this is something that happens a lot in Hollywood. Okay, so what is cultural appreciation? This is when someone seeks to understand and learn about another culture in an effort to broaden their perspective and connect with others cross-culturally. As for examples, let's start off with cosplay again. As you can see, there are many lovely cosplayers in the bottom of the text, including Megan Thee Stallion. The reason why this is considered cultural appreciation is because none of these lovely cosplayers change their natural features to mimic another race. And is again an example of how you can cosplay different races and ethnicities while also not using any degree outrageous or offensive makeup. As for Avatar: The Last Airbender, specifically the animated series, while not perfect representation, it did make waves in representation in Western animation. Yes, it was created by two white guys, but they did do extensive research and hired experts in the cultures they were taking inspiration from, and it's also, again, an example of how you can always learn and do better. The original Avatar cast is predominantly white. However, like 10 years later, they're coming out with a new Avatar movie with more racially accurate casting. Should have this been done in the first place? Yes. Yes, but at least they are trying to make things right. In terms of interracial relationships and families, cultural appropriation can happen within relationships, but when done right, partners can learn and exchange culture in a respectful way. This looks like being open to learning and trying things from your partner's culture and not disrespecting it in any way. And if you choose to have children with your said partner, it's really important that your children can participate and learn in all of your child's cultural heritages, even if it's different from your own. In the bottom left-hand corner is actually an image of me and fellow ASO alumni Jiwa, Kashif, and Sumana. Sumana and Kashif also happen to be members of Columbia's Muslim Student Association, where every year on World Hijab Day, they host a try-on hijab booth. They do this to spread awareness about the significance of the hijab and why they wear it. And this is considered cultural appreciation because they quite literally extended an open invitation for others to learn and try hijabs. And notice how consent and education is a big highlight here. The last example I will be getting into for this slide is on the upper right-hand corner. This is a picture of Oliver Robinson and Charlie Vogue. Both respectively have strong cultural ties to the art of nails, and they came together, learned about each other's culture in terms of nail art, and started a small business called Mantrap. This is also an example of how you can have cultural exchange respectfully, as well as POC solidarity. So, if you are interacting with a culture that is not of your own, here are some questions to ask yourself. 1, why am I doing this? What are my intentions, and do my actions match those intentions? 2, does this object, item, food, etc. hold any cultural significance or importance? 3, am I changing anything about myself, or am I doing something to fit a stereotype? 4, am I using another person's culture for my own gain? 5, do I know enough about this topic or item? And 6, do I have permission to do this, and am I open to being corrected or challenged?
Hello everyone, so I'll be talking about continental born Asians and Asians in the diaspora. So kind of to explain what this is, we want to be very careful with the wording, but using myself as an example, I am the Asian in the diaspora, I am a Filipino American, and then compared to, let's say, a cousin I have who was born and raised in the Philippines. So they're the continental born Asians. And for this part, I kind of want to talk about how we have our similar upbringings as Filipinos, but we would also have our differences as I grew up in America. So, and just to preface this part, both perspectives are valid. It just depends on the situation we're talking about. And it's just kind of up to what you know. And then also the issues aren't exclusive to the Asian community. So any community, like let's say immigrants, I can see me finding this related. So kind of what is the issue that we're talking about between the two sides? And I would say that it has to do with kind of the clash of values that I just mentioned. And I would say for the Asian in the diaspora, it can be very hard because it can make us feel like we are not Asian enough. So maybe you don't know the language, you don't jive with some of the food or some of the cultural values that you have. It might make you feel like you're not Asian enough. And I want to kind of tie this into Asians in media. I want to bring up a podcast I listened to back in 2020. If you guys are familiar with Eric Nam, he has a YouTube channel called Dive Studios, and he kind of interviews a lot of K-pop idols in there. In this one, he introduced Denise, who's the girl on the right. She had just debuted at this time, and Eric, being a veteran of 10 years, and being also a Korean American, he wanted to kind of talk to her about kind of her experience and her upbringing in that, and trying to kind of cultivate herself as a K-pop idol. And kind of to summarize the quotes that I picked up from the podcast, I think she's basically talking about how she feels like a foreigner, whether she's in Korea or America, and how she had a hard time finding herself becoming an idol, and it's something that still shapes her. And then Eric kind of talks about a experience that he had in Korea where he was being scolded and he was looking at the person in the eyes, and in Korea that's considered rude, so the person got really mad at him. And because in America you're taught to look someone in the eyes, so that was like a cultural difference, and it can be very hard when you consider yourself, like for them, Korean American, but they're in Korea now, they don't feel like they're Korean enough, so. Next slide. And then another aspect of this that I want to talk about was parents versus children. I think this is a very big topic. If you're in the diaspora, I would say this is like the #1 time you would have this conflict in your life, since parents are your bridge to your culture. And a lot of the shows that I have on here would have those examples if you're familiar with any of them. And I would say that it's something that really shapes you. And in the media, I would say these shows are really utilize those topics. And I would say a lot of them, although they're not up, they're parts of it all the time. It's usually what pushes the plot forward.
So I'm here to talk about how appropriation harms the APIDA community and other communities of color. So the line can blur between appropriation and appreciation, leading to overgeneralization and lack of understanding of the entire Pan-Asian community. I wanted to use the original animation Avatar and the most recent Netflix adaptation as an example. So in the animation, there's you can tell by the art style, there's lots of sharp angles and stuff like that with the Fire Nation girls to imply that, you know, they're evil and very like harsh, strict characters. And so with the girls below, they have like softer features around their faces, which is very common in the Asian American community. But these girls received a ton of hate from people that they didn't look like the characters, some even calling them too fat for the characters. And why I add, these are teenagers that they're talking about. So it's just entirely inappropriate. And so people have a skewed view of what Asian Americans look like because a lot of media will skew towards Eurocentric standards. All right. Other ways that the community is harmed, there's upholding stereotypes and the sexualization of Asian folks. So I'm going to spew a few numbers at you. So there was a 2021 study that analyzed movies from the 2010, so from 2010 to 2019. Asian Americans were the roles of Asian Americans were supporting roles 72% of the time. Only 4.5% were Asian leads or co-leads. And then they analyzed characters who were supposed to be considered the funny character in the movie, and they noticed, or they observed that characters who were considered funny, half the time they were the punchline, something to be laughed at, instead of just being comedic themselves. So yeah, there's a couple of examples like the perpetual foreigner, or of course the martial artist, the nerd, or the exotic love interest. And then just to oh yeah, so the numbers I said, they suggest that Asians and Asian Americans can only be seen in these limited views when, like other people, we are more complex and we contain multitudes. And then last thing I want to bring up is that, you know, the primary, what's it called? Anyways, people in the majority are not the only ones who can commit cultural appropriation. Lots of other people do it. So an example is within K-pop. A lot of, yes, I heard like the girls, yes. So K-pop relies heavily on hip-hop, R&B, house music, stuff like that, and that comes from the Black community. So even with music, they imitate the music, the style, the choreography. So for example, you can see here, like she's wearing dreads and like braids. There's a lot of other K-pop groups who will emulate that, and many of them get little to no consequence. They spew out like a small apology and all is well, or they don't acknowledge it at all. Yes.
Shout out to Filipino rappers using the N-word.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing in the Philippines.
Yeah, and then Mitch, who was not here, also wanted to bring up Rich Brian with his former name, as we all know. But yeah, we don't talk about it.
Okay, so far we've talked a lot about the more controversial aspects of how Asian culture has been so far portrayed in mainstream media within the States. But let's talk about some of the positives. So in 2018, a film called Crazy Rich Asians was released, which after that film came out, there was a sharp uptick in Asian representation overall. And while that film was in no way perfect and had its own share of flaws in the States, it did really pave the way for a lot more Asians to be able to take center stage and prove to not only Hollywood but also the general public that people will pay to see Asians on the big screen as long as the story is good. That's the only thing that matters. Next slide, please. But before we even get to 2018, let's look at all the times before as well. So I'm sure many of you can recognize some of the faces that I have on this presentation here. So well-known YouTubers like Markiplier, APIDA, Blogger Wise, also BuzzFeed famously, TV show characters like Christina Yang, Tucker, and Glenn from Grey's Anatomy, House MD, and Walking Dead, respectively. And yeah, these are all great examples and great influences for the Asian community and just as representation, even way before 2018. But, oh, sorry, can you go back? Yes. But as to Tina's point, a lot of them are side characters in the media that they are in. And it's great that they're taking space. It's great that they're being able to share and tell stories that go beyond being Asian for the purpose of being Asian, but having more complex, interesting stories. But yeah, a lot of them are just side characters. Now, next slide. Now, after 2018, there has been a huge influx in Asians being able to take center stage, whether it be in the main role, whether it be as a more prominent side character, whether it be in the type of story that they're being able to tell. Here I have some examples. Artists like Nguyen and Olivia Rodrigo, who are super popular right now. Big names like Marvel with Shang-Chi and Miss Marvel, as well as award-nominated films like The Farewell, Past Lives, Everything, Ever All at Once, and Beef, and so on and so forth. So we have made huge strides. We have made huge strides in the fight for more representation, but we still have a long way to go because even in the even in the example shown here, I'm sure that I missed some when I was trying to put this together. But I really did try my best to make it as diverse as possible. But we're still very lacking. There's many lighter skinned people featured here. We're missing darker skin representation. We're missing queer representation. There's still so much more left for us to do, and everyone deserves for the chance to have the space to have their story told. Thank you, Ari. Thank you, Mike. Yes.
So with all of that said, thank you panelists for sharing all that useful information. So putting it all together, and this is what non-APIDA and POC allies can do in general. So obviously most are self-explanatory, and these are just like guidelines and takeaways that we want to leave with you today, especially allies, as discussing these like questions and concepts can really depend on an individual's experience, and all that good stuff. So the first point I want to make, all of these are very like interconnected and go hand in hand with one another. So the first one is doing your research, looking and expanding your perspective through a Pan-Asian lens, also known as don't just ask your Asian friend because they're probably different than me or any other people. So that comes with understanding intersectionality and unlearning or generalization. All of us come from different walks of life, just as humanity is. For example, like we all have different, we all come from different economic class, or it's weird because a lot of Asian representation in media, we're always seen as like rich when that's not really the case. Like, so class, disability, mental health, queerness, skin color, etc., all that good stuff. And the next point is appreciating and supporting Asian media in a respectful and healthy manner. So as Ari said before, like especially like in cosplay, making sure you're not changing anything to alter your racial identity in order to look more Asian. There's also like understanding there's, actually never mind. Train of thought. Just left. But that also means supporting non-mainstream Asian media. So on the left slide here, I offer 2 different examples here of like Asian media that I really like. Obviously, the first 2 come from like big companies like Disney and Netflix. However, these are very like very underappreciated since they come from a more Western animation kind of style, and I think I wanted to pay homage especially for Asian media that is outside of anime basically. So there's Amphibia and Nimona. I really appreciate those 2 pieces of animation a lot because of their differences in Asian identities as well as queer stories and themes that they express in the show. And last but not least, bringing attention to the reality that APIDA and POC communities face today, such as the Black Lives Matter movement, Stop AAPI Hate, and the rise of hate crimes the past few years, especially since the pandemic and everything. Free Palestine and the students that are risking their lives essentially to fight for a freer Palestine and other countries as well. And last but not least as well, uplifting and actively listening to APIDA voices. So that means making sure that these folks, our community, is able to take up space in spaces where we don't usually get that. In this world where systems are in place that are not built for us, and what that means for all of us to overcome that. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you all so much for listening and really giving us the space to talk about these issues as we are able to do so as of recent. And I'm glad that we're able to do so today. So by scanning the QR code, you'll have access to this presentation and a document of sources as well that we used here for today's presentation. We also have an ongoing list of APIDA organizations, resources, and media. And if there's anything in particular that you wanted to add that isn't on that list, please email me. There's an email on the document, so you can contact me through there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So Q&A time. All the good stuff. Feel free to step right up to the mic. Yes, you can step right up to the mic. And please be respectful of the questions and make sure the intentions behind that are as respectful as this. Yes.
All right, so first of all, good presentation though. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so as I was hearing y'all talk about this, right? So I was in, I don't know how to make it quick, by the way. I was in high school, right? And I was watching some anime or whatever, and for some reason, my friends back in high school were like, ooh, this man wasn't all that anime shit, though. That's some weird shit right there, bro. And like, you can't make this up. I was trying to find like a place to hide somewhere to watch anime where no one can find me, right? And so I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Because it's 2 languages now. And then for some reason, so have y'all ever been have y'all ever been humiliated for watching anime back then?
Yes, for watching anime, but also just for being Asian in general.
Yeah.
I know many of us have lunchbox stories where we bring our homemade Asian food to lunch. People be like, oh, that's weird, that's gross. I've been made fun of for my eyes. People are like, oh, you have really big eyes for an Asian, you must not be Asian. Just different things about my physical appearance. And it was also always tied to Asian media. I was made fun of for watching Power Rangers. I was made fun of for watching anime, all that good stuff. So it's unfortunately really common for a lot of us in the community to have those experiences. Does anyone else want to talk about their experiences? The panelists? To Ari's point, I think, yes, I felt very similarly. I don't watch anime as often anymore, just due to the nature of my life and how busy I've become. Honestly, I watch a lot of Western sitcoms now, but definitely when I was younger, middle, high school age, I did watch a lot of anime, and there was definitely some weird looks I may have gotten. And also to her point, I do agree, even I grew up in Southern California, which is known as being pretty ethnically diverse and having a large Asian community. But it did really depend on the city you lived in, and the city I specifically lived in, and the high school I went to was predominantly white and Hispanic, and actually had about less than 10% of an Asian demographic. So I do remember some days, you know, I would have my lunchbox or have rice and seaweed, which is pretty common as a Korean snack, and so many people would just come up to me like, ew, like, what's that? Like, oh, it's so salty. Oh, like, why are we eating this? I'm like, I don't know, it's good food. It's just good taste. So yes, I definitely have those experiences as well.
I think I'd like to add on to that. I think my relationship with anime is very complicated because I've experienced being made fun of that as well. And like even after watching like anime and everything when I was like growing up and everything, it gave me a lot of body issues because of like the fan service and the over sexualization of women. And especially as Tina was speaking about like the Eurocentric features in a lot of animes, like it gave me a lot of like image issues that like I really didn't want to associate myself with, which is why I stopped watching anime for like a few years, like during my high school times and everything. And it wasn't until recently that I wanted to start watching more anime, as I've seen basically like more animes like what's the word? Yeah, more diverse and like more like darker skinned characters and everything, and women being portrayed more as like more than just an object essentially. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Next question.
Hello, my name is Ryo Shigeta. I'm an actor and entertainer, sort of in the geek space, and I was born in Japan and grew up in both Japan and the United States. My question for you sort of pertains to, well, I really appreciated your delineation of appropriation versus appreciation. I wanted the, I guess, panel sort of ideas when it comes to, we do see Asian faces and Asian actors a lot in media. However, I feel that still in writers' rooms and creators, producers, we still do not have that same diversity. And I wanted to know, I guess, your thoughts on whether that type of appreciation, I guess, if it is appreciation, number one, if that is a harmful type of representation, or just your thoughts in general on how, while Asian people can be on the screen, it may not be the words of the Asian person that's being spoken.
That's a great question. Actually, many of us here graduated from Columbia Film, and the reasons you stated were big reasons to why many of us decided to pursue that art. While it really is a case-by-case situation, I think Avatar is an example of pretty good representation, even though it wasn't written by Asian people. But I do agree that we do need more Asian people behind the camera, in the writer's room, in the director's chair, the producer's desk, because that's really where most of the work is. The actors can do an amazing job portraying those words, but the real words do need to come from us, because we have a very, how do I say this, a very unique experience that does need to be shared. And I always say representation, no matter where it is key to a better world and more quality.
And if I might add, there's still a big hurdle, especially for POC people, especially in Hollywood and the arts in general, a lot of it is related to networking and connections and who you know. And so, people of color really struggle with those connections because in order to have an in, you gotta know somebody. And so for POC creators in general, it's just about breaking that barrier in the first place. And so that is, do I have a solution? No, but that is a challenge that we'll have to face.
If I may, I would like to ask one quick follow-up question, which is that as well-informed media consumers, is there something that you would suggest for us to sort of look into or research before or after we appreciate certain media?
I mean, there's not really a deadline. You can always learn before, after, during, as long as you put in the work. I think that's what really matters, at least to me. I don't know if the panelists have any other perspectives on that.
Thank you.
So I am an Asian American. I was adopted from China, and I think that within the adopted community, there's a lot of hesitancy in embracing our own culture because we don't ever, and I know that this is true for Asian Americans everywhere, but it's also, we don't ever feel quite Asian enough to embrace our culture. We never, feel American enough to really fit in within the communities that we've been adopted into. And I was just wondering how you guys felt in regards to the conundrum of not feeling enough for one community or another.
Welcome to the Asian American experience.
Honestly, I don't think I can really fully speak on this because I'm not an adoptee either. And I think one way or another, we all feel some kind of level of not being Asian enough, not feeling this specific identity enough and everything. And I just want you to know that you are enough. Like, whatever you embrace the fuck out of that. Seriously. Honestly, do what you can. Join communities around the Chicago area. I think our document will also have specific resources and programs that'll have that. There's Advancing Justice Chicago. Just opening and basically reaching out to communities and stuff will help with that and heal your Asian diaspora soul, I think.
I will also add that I fully understand how you feel. I also was not adopted and I don't fully understand your experience, but I did have a roommate in college who I was very close to who did share a little bit about that with me, who had a very similar story to you. I do know that there's a Chinese American camp in the States, I think some in the Midwest. I have a friend who's third or fourth generation Chinese American family. She sends her kids there. I know it goes to pretty high age, so that is a potential resource. I will also say that I do believe that within the Asian community, the Asian American community, we can be very cliquey, which I do regret and I have definitely been a part of in the past, and I do think it does come from not fully understanding our own identity and wanting to have a safe space for us, but figuring out what is a safe space, what are those boundaries, who do we include is definitely still a struggle that many of us are working through. I think for my personal experience of not feeling Asian enough or American enough or one or the other, in the Korean community, many Korean immigrants are tied by Christianity and church. So that was a huge way that I was able to be connected to my cultural identity. I went to a Korean American church from when I was an infant to when I left for college, and even when I came here for a few years, I still went to a Korean American church in Illinois. And while I did find some comfort being able to be around other Koreans, not feeling like I had to explain myself or convince them to go eat Korean fried chicken with me or go to Chungbu to go grocery shopping, even there, I knew I didn't fit the typical type. I didn't fit the mold. I'm overweight, I don't fit I don't watch K-dramas all the time. I don't listen to K-pop all the time. And even within that supposedly safe Korean American community that I had tied so much to my own cultural identity, I still didn't feel like I fully belonged. And then on the flip side, in school, going to a predominantly Hispanic and white school through all my years, I do remember, and I can't believe I didn't register it as strange at the time, but it was all I knew. But I do remember many of my friends calling me like, "Oh, you're my favorite Asian," and I would just accept it, and I genuinely didn't know better. And I was like, "Oh, that's like they're saying like it's a good thing, so like yeah, I should like try and be their favorite Asian." But I think even in that is a demonstration like yeah, I didn't fully belong. I was still seen as other, even though I was literally born in the States, I grew up in the States, I had a very similar relative upbringing to others, but I'm still seen as the other.
Just to loop back around, do what you can. You know, if you want to learn about stuff, go for it. If you don't feel like you're enough, stop that. Like do what you can, learn what you can, and just like embrace who you are.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
Hey, first of all, great panel. Second, the question is, have you ever had experiences with your non-Asian friends, especially non-POC friends, going the other direction and going overboard and calling out cultural appropriation or Asian hate when it's not really there? As an example, I have a friend who called out a local band for cultural appropriation against Asians for using anime imagery in their albums and their shows and whatnot, their merch and whatnot. When I, as an Asian, felt like I didn't really see the angle there, and I didn't really know where to point them as far as that goes, because I'm an immigrant, I don't have the Asian American experience, so I want to know what you guys think.
Well, first to start, your experience is valid. Your identity is valid. I never had a friend who was not a POC directly call something cultural appropriation in terms of being of Asian culture. I've had friends who would speak over Asian people, would speak over the Latino community, the Black community, as if they were kind of like a blank savior kind of thing. As for the band you're talking about using anime in their band art, I also don't see an issue with that, being that they are Asian. And I'm sure they know like the limits.
I mean, there were no Asian people in the. There was one Filipino guy in the band.
Okay.
Most of them weren't, and it wasn't like.
Oh, I see.
But I feel like either way, I wouldn't have seen the angle.
Yeah, I think it really just depends. I mean, we don't really know them personally, so we can't really speak too much on it. Do the panelists have anything else to add?
I will say just in general, different cultures will have conflicting opinions from person to person. So I say in general, use your own discretion. Yeah.
I also just really want to add that if you like walk through the artist alley, like you'll see a lot of like non-Asians with Asian art, and I feel like it should be totally fine. Like none of us have issues with it. So, yeah.
Oh, no, I think that's it. I just had a warning, I think.
All right.
I couldn't read. The guy was holding the sign. I was like, oh.
All right, thanks.
15. All right, let's speed round.
Okay, last minute question out of nowhere. I'm working on a project. Yeah. And I feel very weird about it sometimes, especially like when I was approached with it, because it is about a certain Asian culture. I'm trying to find my words, but a certain Asian culture that obviously I'm not part of. And a part of me at the start of it, at least, felt that it was not my place to be doing art for this project because I don't know the experience. I know little to nothing about it. Honestly, I could do my research and stuff like that, but it just felt weird. So I wanted to ask, like, how should I go about, like, what route should I take to, like, learn about this kind of stuff before I apply it to what we're working on for this project.
Okay, so context, can I share that we're working on? Okay, so context here, so the person who's asking the question, Patty, me, and Ari are all working on an animated pilot together. I'm the producer, Ari's the creator, and everything. And honestly, I understand how you feel, like, when it comes to, like, making art or collaborating with somebody about a story who that you don't necessarily like identify with, but you like stand in solidarity with. And I think as long as you're doing the research, I think that really matters. Like, I know that you're my bestie, so I'm a little biased. So, but I think the best way to really collaborate with others is to really understand one another and embracing those kinds of differences. And I think you're doing a great job of doing that. Yeah, I mean, I think there's no really right or wrong way of doing it. I wish I had a clear answer, but I think it's just having that open communication and really being honest with one another and each other of what it means to understand somebody else's culture that you don't identify with.
And in this case, it is different because we do know you. The reason why I had you come on board is because I do trust you. I trust you to draw our people, Filipino people, respectfully and to do your research. And you can always rely on the other Filipino team members to learn more and get questions. It really is a case-by-case situation. If, like, in a situation where you didn't know the people that well at all, it would be a little different. You would definitely have to up the questions, up the research, all that. But luckily, you do have Kate and I and the other team members to rely on. So thank you.
I think it's all about trust. It's all about trust.
Lovely panel. Thank you guys for putting this together. I just wanted to touch on some of the experiences that you guys talked about, especially growing up in an area where you were not surrounded by Asian people. I grew up like an hour and a half south of Chicago, and thankfully I have just moved here in October. But yeah, just talking about like you're my favorite Asian and whatever, like being in an all white area, like you just learn to like grin and accept the Asian jokes, like the driving jokes, all of that. And I was raised by white people, so it's kind of like it was something, and that ties into not really getting into anime, not really getting into K-pop, anything like that, because I felt so visible and alienated from everyone that they would always comment on things, even if they thought they were being kind or inclusive, but just consistently commenting on like, because I love Hello Kitty and Sailor Moon. That's the one that I would like stick to. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, and so like anything like that, they comment on it. So that's why you kind of like have to step back and not anything. But all that being said, my first like true moment where I did not feel like the minority, and this is like as going into adulthood, I did finally get into K-pop, and I saw Blackpink last year, and I kid you not, I was like going up the escalator at the United Center, and I started crying because it was just Asian people. Like, I've never been like not the minority. Like, it's so crazy, and I remember like posting about it and being like, you guys don't get it. Like, it was like our whole row was all Asian people, and one of the girls was like, we're all Asian, and I was like, yeah. Like, it was so good. Anyway, my question is like, I know a lot of you said that you were not adoptees or you were raised with Asian families, but is there anything that like brought you joy like that? Like you did not feel like you were the minority, like if you wanted to share?
I can really resonate with you. I was born and raised an hour away from here in a very small town, very little diversity. Fun fact, if you Google top 5 most boring towns in Illinois, my town is number 5. Yes, so I can really resonate with you and feeling ostracized your entire life. Not feeling like you can partake in your own culture is really, really awful feeling. Always feeling alienated, really, really awful feeling. For me, it wasn't until I joined actually ASO Asian organizations where I really felt like I belonged and seen and safe with my Asian identity. It was also post-2020 when Asian hate crimes were at an all-time high, and it was a time where I, more than ever, really needed that community. So I'm very grateful for ASO, and I always will be. But I'm very happy that you had that experience as well of feeling like you belong somewhere, because it's really important for all of us to have that feeling. I'm very proud of you.
I will say in Chicago, there's tons of events that happen around. So this past year, I went to the Lunar New Year celebration in Uptown for the very first time. I felt so much joy there because I hadn't gone to the Lunar New Year celebration since I was a kid, you know. So finding those things where like maybe you did this when you were younger, or maybe this is a thing you haven't done yet, you can find joy in doing those things.
Did you get money for Lunar New Year's?
What?
Did you get money for Lunar New Year's?
I got a little sticker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. And very, very, very quickly adding, I work as assistant teacher in a Montessori school, and we have lots of Asian children. And like, I am like really into like them expressing themselves, like they celebrate Lunar New Year and everywhere New Year, you know. But like, that's how I'm like trying to like heal that inner child, that little Asian girl by like really celebrating.
Thank you for your hard work.
Amazing. Just the time check for all involved. It is 5:51.
Let's go.
Okay, try to make this quick. So Columbia alumni, former ASO member as well. Okay, so it's been a long while since I've been in school. So I just I'm curious of how has ASO as a group, like how, I guess, I'm trying to find my words. Like how, I guess your experience both as an individual and as a student worker, how are things at Columbia today?
Oh, it's been changing a lot just in the past year. We have a new president, a lot of questionable buildings popping up on campus. Kate and I have been graduating for almost a year now, so even within that, it's changed a lot. There was a strike that affected the school greatly in terms of teachers, in terms of classes. They cut over 300 courses. But other than that, the professors are still really amazing. Again, it depends on what department you are in the film department, love the professors.
Because I was president in 2019, like before they were on the board, and I remember our generation, our generation had like a really difficult time of like finding members or finding people, like not just people who are Asian like flat out, because you know you look hard enough you'll find them, but just people who wanted to come and like learn and like celebrate being Asian or learning about Asian culture with us. And I remember seeing pictures of like their first meeting of the year last year, and there were just like so many people, and that brought me a lot of joy just to see how much the organization itself has grown, and even into doing stuff like this panel, like it's extended far beyond the college's borders.
I'm gonna start crying to see how ASO has come. Yeah, because I think it was a really hard time when the pandemic hit and we all went online and everything, and so we all kind of just migrated over to Discord with events and everything, and that was very manageable because everything was online. And then moving on to in person, it was like, oh, okay, we actually have to deal with people and event planning and all this fun stuff. Cool, yeah. But honestly, during my time, like from being creative director to working as president, it's been such a uphill climb, I think, in terms of like rebuilding ASO and around like the Columbia community. So just seeing that, so it brings lots of tears. Thank you.
All right. Hello. So my intention is not to be rude. I'm going to be looking at my phone because I'm nervous and so anyway, I work with an Asian American film festival that's hosted in New York. And so like our main goal is to like increase representation of the moving image by and for Asian creators, you know, as well as those of the Asian diaspora. And so it's really fun and really interesting and just really eye-opening to see all these really small creators of like independent films and all of that. And like for most of these cases, I would say like the great majority of the creators, cast, crew, everyone is of Asian descent or of the Asian diaspora. And which again, amazing. Love it. We love to see it. We love to tell our stories. We love that. But in this process, I've also noticed that there's still like this separation between like the Hollywood things, right? Where you would have one or two or maybe even three Asian characters or other people of color. And it's still, there are a lot of still like stereotypical, sometimes negative representations of these Asian characters, right? And then on the other side, we have this independent Asian cinema scene where we get to call the shots now. But in those, there is like pretty much no representation of like non-Asian people or non-people of color, to the extent that sometimes it's just so separated that the audiences are also separated. So I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on that, or if you've noticed anything like that.
I'm just a little confused about your question. Not on you,
No,
but just to backtrack. Are you asking about like what our thoughts are about like the lack of?
So not really like the lack of it, but the fact that I guess what I hope to see in the future is kind of like a balance, right?
Yeah.
Between everyone kind of having this equal representation in the same media or in the same piece of work.
Yes.
And to me, at least, it doesn't seem like those parts have come together. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that. If you don't, that's fine too.
Unfortunately, it's just there are all barriers and doors that, while we have broken down some, there's so many to be crossed and open. It's really hard as someone like Kate and I are trying to break into that as well.
It's like easier said than done, I guess. Like no racism. That's obviously not a thing. But like I don't know. Like there's just a lot to unpack there too, because it's also like when you look at the continent of Asia, what do you see? A lot of countries. So there's obviously such a disparity between just like East Asian representation and then all of the rest of like Asian representation from like Southeast, South, West Asia, Central Asia, like all of us, even making sure that we also make space for our Pacific Islanders and Native Hawaiian and Desi folks too. There's just so much work that needs to be done, and I think that it's gonna be such a hard like battle, but I think having these conversations are really important and like the really like good starting point.
And I do think we will get to that point eventually. It might take a while, and it'll take a lot of like blood and tears, but we will get there. And I want to say thank you for also putting the work in your festival as well. Your role is very important.
Our next question, is that Yoshi?
That's the Yoshi on that.
I came in a little bit late, so sorry if you already addressed this presentation. It's kind of like a reverse question on allyship, because I have a few friends who are Asian, but they're mixed descent, and like, there's like conversations about wanting to be physically Asian. This person in particular, they're Japanese and like Latino, but they aren't quite like passing, but raised by a Japanese grandmother, knows the language and everything. There has been like a lot of like identity issues, because like a lot of people consider me like white, or like you're not Asian, like you're white passing, therefore you are white. But I kind of think I don't agree with that. Like my practice inclusivity on like your Asian background, you have like that cultural significance. Like like there is that identity expression in yourself. My question is here too, like how can I? That's on that perspective. Receive this from like other Asian people too. At this point, easy to say, but my question here is like, how can I practice more allyship? How can I like start these conversations with people who may be a little bit pushing back on like what that Asian identity means, because it's not always being visibly Asian, of course. And what else I can do, I guess.
Intersectionality, it's a thing.
Yeah, so it's just like, the Asian American experience is beyond looks and appearances, so I say, just challenge them in general and like, how, like I mentioned this in the presentation, like, people are complex and contain multitudes, you know? So if people push back, it's like, oh, they're not Asian enough because of this, or they look like that, ask them like, why is that? Why do you think that? You know, have them explain their thinking. It's like, hey, this is weird thinking. Stop that.
Because it's always like, why do you think that? It's like, well, they're white passing, therefore, like, no, wait, race is like a phenotype, or like, it's like our appearance, right? I'm like, oh, that's quite true. Like,
Yeah.
I know, like,
Part one is about having more diverse Asian faces on media, which is a whole rant for another time. But like, you know, there is people who are white passing, they do have like, you know, some privilege there.
yeah.
So I don't know where this thought was going, but like, like there is a privilege there. I think we're gonna get kicked out too, but yeah. Like,
Thank you.
We can talk more about it after we officially.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you all so much for attending this panel. This has been so awesome. Thank you for everyone the panelists who were able to speak here today. I really appreciate your time and everything. Like seriously, y'all are amazing. So good to see all the ASL alumni like with me here today. Does anybody still need access to the presentation? Because I can go back to the slide really quick for people to take photos really quick. Oh my god. Okay, there we go. There it is. Feel free to take a photo of it. We have documented sources and resources as well for you all to check out. And thank you all once again. Have a